Hi King Lions, today we're going to be looking at rounding. Remember, when you round, you're saying what is the number closest to? Are we going up? Are we staying the same? What are we doing? So we have a couple of things that we've learned to do for rounding. Second graders, you have to round to the hundreds place. Third graders, you have to round to the thousands place. So let's look at some numbers. So let's start with the number 256, and we're going to round that to the tens and to the hundreds. So we have a couple of things. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to plot it on a number line. So remember, when we look at the tens place, we have to say this would be 250 up to 260. I'm thinking of what two tens is my number between. And I'd have 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's 256. So is 256 closer to 260 or closer to 250? Well, I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces away from 250 and 1, 2, 3, 4 from 260. So I know that 256 would go up to 260. I also know that if I'm rounding to the tens place, my eyes are going to go to the ones place, and I think about my rule, 5 and above, give it a shove, 4 and less, let it rest. So the 6 in the ones place is above 5, so I know I need to give this a shove. Nothing happens to my 2. I still have 200. I can put the same number and round it to the hundreds place. So this time I'm looking at what 200s is my number between. My number is between 200 and 300. And I'm going to put my tens, 210, 220, 230, 240, 250, 260, 270, 280, 290. Where would 256 be? 200, this is 210, 220, 230, 240, 250, 260. 256 would be right in there. So is it closer to 300 or closer to 200? I can see that it's closer to 300. Then I think about my rule. If I'm rounding to the hundreds place, my eyes go to the tens place. The 5 in the tens place tells me I need to give it a shove. So I'm going to give it a shove up to 300. So 256 rounds to 260 to the tens place, 300 to the hundreds place. What if I have a number that the next 10 would be, let's see, we'll just go for the gold here. If we're looking at the number 897, and I want to round it to the tens place, I'm going to say 890, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 8, 99, 900. So I know 897 is between 890 and the next 10 is 900. 897, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97 is right here. So what 10 is it closest to? It's closest to 900. If I'm looking at my rule, I'm rounding to the tens place, my eyes go to the ones place. The 7 in the ones place tells me to give it a shove. If I give 9 a shove, I have 10. 10 tens is 100. So I know that this would round up to 900. Third graders and second graders, if you want to give it a shot, if we're rounding to the thousands place, we can round 897 to the thousands place, because remember how many thousands are in this number? 0. 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1,000. This is at 897. We know that's almost 900, so it's way up here. Is it closer to 1,000 or closer to 0? I can see that it's closer to 1,000. If I use my rule, I'm rounding to the thousands place, I look at the hundreds place, the 8 in the hundreds place tells me to give it a shove. If I give 0 a shove, I get 1. So it would round to 1,000. So rounding on the number line is a good way to visualize what you're doing. Otherwise, you need to know your rounding rules. 5 and above, give it a shove. 4 or less, let it rest. So if we rounded 256 to the thousands, the 2 in the hundreds place says, stay low, let it rest. So this would round to 0 if I was rounding to the thousands place. So rounding, think about situations where rounding is appropriate. In some situations, rounding is not. If I was to say how many students want a popsicle, that might be an exact number that I need. But if I went to the store and if I have 30 students that need popsicles and the box comes in 12, about how many boxes do I need in order to get everybody a popsicle? So we can use rounding as a way to check the reasonableness of our answers when we're solving problems as well. So now you're going to try one. So on your paper, I want you to round the number 616 to the nearest 10 and the nearest 100. So round 616 to the nearest 10 and the nearest 100. So you can pause the video while you do that. If I'm rounding to the tens place, my eyes are going to the ones place. The 6 in the ones place tells me to give it a shove. I need to keep my 600, but I gave my 1 a shove, and I have to have a 0. If I'm rounding to the 10, I have to have a 0 in the ones place. If I'm rounding to the 100, I need to have a 0 in the ones place and in the hundreds place. If I'm rounding to the thousands, I need a 0 in the ones place, a 0 in the tens place, and a 0 in the hundreds place. Rounding to the hundreds place, the 1 in the tens place tells me to stay low. So I'm going to stay low. 616 is closer to 600 than 700. Try another one. Let's try 1,492. Ooh, how about 98? Just to give it an extra little punch. And we're going to round this to the tens, the hundreds, and the thousands places. So pause the video so you can do that. All right, if I'm rounding to the tens place, I'm going to look at the ones place. The 8 in the ones place tells me to give it a shove. If I give 9 tens a shove, I have 10 tens. 10 tens is 100. So I need to say 1,500. Let's say that again. I had 9 tens. The 8's telling me to give it a shove, so I now have 10 tens. 10 tens is going to change my hundreds place. If I'm rounding to the hundreds place, my eyes go to the tens place. The 9 in the tens place tells me to give it a shove. My 1,000 stays the same. That's the biggest mistake students make, is they forget to keep those digits that come before the place we're rounding, and they're going to tell me that 1,498 rounds to 500. It rounds to 1,500. If I'm rounding to the thousands place, my eyes go to the hundreds place. The 4 in the hundreds place says, let it rest. So 1,498 is closer to 1,000 than 2,000. So you can practice rounding. You can practice rounding to the tens. You can practice rounding all the way to the thousands place. You can roll some dice to generate numbers. You can get dominoes. You can just make up numbers. Whatever you want to do to generate some good numbers. If you're not understanding it, then I suggest looking at the number line, because that helps you get a visual for it. And then go to the rounding rule from there. And if you need help, you make sure to let me know, and we can arrange to have a little meeting. Have fun with rounding.